Maybe there's something I didn't think was necessary to tell you.
Pernell Roberts truly hated him more than anyone. He was the face of integrity, wrapped in a cowboy hat. Pernell Roberts, the man who embodied Adam Cartwright on Bonanza, looked every bit the composed gentleman. Calm, confident, and effortlessly charismatic. But behind that smooth voice and piercing stare was a man who refused to play Hollywood's favorite game, pretending. While other stars smiled for cameras and swallowed their opinions to stay on good terms, Pernell did the unthinkable. He spoke his truth, loudly, fearlessly, no matter who it offended. To him, honesty wasn't a career choice. It was a moral duty. And if that meant losing friends, roles, or even respect in the industry, so be it. At glittering Hollywood parties, while others exchanged flattery, Roberts drew invisible lines. There were actors he simply couldn't stomach, men whose arrogance, hypocrisy, or lack of principle went against everything he stood for. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on that secret list, the 5 stars Pernell Roberts openly clashed with, and the jaw-dropping stories behind each feud. Once you hear them, you'll never look at these Hollywood icons the same way again. Pernell Elvin Roberts Jr. wasn't born into fame. He built it, from the red clay of Waycross, Georgia. Born on May 18, 1928, in a small southern town still reeling from the Great Depression, Pernell's story began far from Hollywood's glitter. His father, a hard-working Dr. Pepper sales manager, and his mother, a gentle soul named Minnie Myrtle Roberts, raised an only child who was anything but ordinary. While other boys chased baseballs or mischief, Pernell chased melodies. He played the horn in the school band, performed in church gatherings, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that hinted at something deeper. But acting, that wasn't even on the radar. After high school, he followed the sensible path: Georgia Tech, engineering, stability. Yet behind every formula, something inside him whispered that his heart didn't belong to blueprints. So in 1946, he made a bold turn, joining the United States Marine Corps. There, amid the drills and discipline, Pernell found his rhythm again, not with weapons, but with music. Playing the tuba and horn in the Marine Corps band, he kept his artistic spirit alive in a world ruled by order and duty. It was a quiet spark, but one that would soon set the stage for one of television's most unforgettable icons. What drives a man to abandon stability for a dream? For Pernell Roberts, it wasn't just ambition, it was destiny calling from the stage. When his military service ended, Pernell didn't take the safe route. Instead, he took a leap of faith. He enrolled at the University of Maryland, where the world of student theater pulled him in like a magnet. What began as a pastime soon became a calling, something that felt written into his very soul. Acting wasn't just something he did, it was who he was. So, with the kind of courage only dreamers understand, Pernell made a bold decision. He left college behind and set out to chase the impossible. In the early 1950s, he packed his hopes, his grit, and a few belongings and headed straight for New York City, a place where talent, hunger, and determination were the only currencies that mattered. He enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, where he trained by day and scraped by with odd jobs at night. It was grueling, but Pernell never wavered. He wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing truth on the stage. Then, in 1952, his persistence finally paid off. He landed his first role in The Man Who Came to Dinner, It was small, but for Pernell, it was everything. The first spark of a fire that would define the rest of his life. From that moment on, there was no going back. He threw himself into theater with unstoppable force, commanding every stage he touched. Audiences were captivated by his deep, resonant voice and the quiet power he carried into every role. Before long, he was performing Shakespeare, Macbeth, The Taming of the Shrew, Romeo and Juliet, earning his place among the finest actors in New York's Shakespeare Festival. In a world obsessed with fame, Pernell Roberts was different. He wasn't just acting, he was living his truth. A man determined to write his own story, no matter how unpredictable the script. By the late 1950s, Hollywood had finally noticed Pernell Roberts, but it wasn't just luck that got him there. In 1958, he made his film debut in Desire Under the Elms, sharing the screen with Sophia Loren and Burl Ives, and proved he could hold his own among Hollywood's biggest names. That same year, he appeared in The Sheep Man, a western that hinted at the genre that would soon define his career. Over the next year, Roberts steadily carved his place in television, landing roles in hit shows like The Virginian and Gunsmoke. But it was 1959 that would change everything. That's when he was cast as Adam Cartwright, the intelligent, steadfast eldest son on NBC's Bonanza. The show didn't just succeed, it exploded, becoming a cultural phenomenon almost overnight. Pernell Roberts went from promising actor to household name in a matter of months. Week after week, millions tuned in to watch life unfold on the Ponderosa Ranch. And while fans admired his quiet strength and sharp intellect, Pernell quietly wrestled with a different reality. The fame, the adoration, the limelight, they all felt strangely hollow. The role he was celebrated for didn't reflect the man he truly was inside. Roberts was never one to bite his tongue, and on Bonanza, that outspoken nature made him both respected and feared. Time and again, he clashed with producers, frustrated by what he saw as shallow writing and the lack of meaningful depth in Adam Cartwright. To Pernell, the series had all the glamour of television stardom, but it lacked purpose, challenge, and the social resonance he craved. Imagine walking away from the peak of your fame, leaving behind millions of adoring fans, and risking everything for your own principles. That's exactly what Pernell Roberts did in 1965. After 6 wildly successful seasons of Bonanza, just when he was at the height of his celebrity, he shocked the world by walking away. Many assumed it would be the end of his career, but Pernell wasn't afraid to start over. He returned to the stage, the place where his passion for acting first ignited, while taking guest roles on TV, building his career on his own terms, brick by brick. By the late 1970s, his determination paid off. He landed the lead in Trapper John M.D., earning critical acclaim and winning over a whole new generation of fans. But behind that calm voice and steady gaze, Pernell held strong opinions, especially about some of the people he worked with. And this is where the story gets juicy. The 5 actors Pernell Roberts absolutely couldn't stand, and the shocking reasons why. Once you hear them, you'll never look at these Hollywood legends the same way again. Number 1. Michael Landon. At first, Roberts' relationship with Bonanza's youngest star was polite, almost friendly. But as Landon's ambition grew, so did the tension. Charismatic and adored by fans, Landon quickly became the show's golden boy. Behind the scenes, though, Roberts saw a different side: manipulative, self-centered, and obsessed with control. Landon started writing and directing episodes, rewriting scenes to make his character Little Joe shine, often at the expense of others. Roberts was furious. It was the kind of moment that could split a friendship in two. According to insiders, Pernell Roberts once looked Michael Landon straight in the eye and said, "You're not trying to make the show better, you're trying to make yourself bigger." From that day forward, the air between them turned cold. The two men, once co-stars bound by success, barely spoke unless the script demanded it. Roberts couldn't stand what he called Landon's perfectionist image. To him, Michael was all surface, someone who played depth on camera but avoided it in real life. So when Roberts finally walked away from Bonanza, Landon's silence, his refusal to even acknowledge the departure, cut deeper than any public feud ever could. And years later, when Landon reinvented himself with Little House on the Prairie, Pernell couldn't resist twisting the knife. He reportedly said, "It's more of the same. He's still playing cowboy, still playing saint." That bitter line revealed everything. The pride, the hurt, and the resentment that time never managed to heal. But Michael Landon wasn't the only one who left Roberts feeling betrayed. Number 2, Dan Blocker. His rift with Dan, who played the gentle, beloved Hoss Cartwright, didn't begin with anger, but with heartbreak. In the early days, they'd been close, two classically trained actors who cared deeply about truth and performance. But as Roberts' clashes with the network intensified, Blocker quietly stepped back. Pernell saw it as abandonment. He believed Dan should have stood beside him when he fought against what he saw as shallow writing and the show's insensitivity towards Native American characters. Instead, Blocker tried to play the peacemaker, smoothing over tension while Pernell felt alone than ever. What began as a brotherhood on screen had, behind the scenes, fractured beyond repair. It wasn't just scripts or salaries that tested Pernell Roberts. It was principles. When others chose to stay quiet, he called it cowardice. To him, silence in the face of injustice was the same as surrender. In one fiery interview, he didn't hold back, saying, "Dan had the heart, but not the spine. He chose comfort over conscience." That bitterness soon boiled over. One day, right in the middle of a scene, Roberts slammed down his script and walked off the set, furious at what he called a degrading piece of writing. Cameras kept rolling, and so did Dan Blocker. Later, Roberts confronted him, voice low but cutting. "You had a choice. You always had a choice." From that day, the brotherhood that once defined them began to fracture. Blocker never spoke against Pernell in public, but he never stood up for him either. Their silence became louder than any argument, and it was that quiet distance that cut deepest. And then came feud number 3, Chuck Connors. This one didn't start on Bonanza, but it burned just as hot. At a charity gala celebrating Western TV icons, Chuck Connors, tall, broad-shouldered, every bit the star of The Rifleman, commanded the room like a king among cowboys. But behind the charm, something ugly lurked. Witnesses said Connors barked orders, dismissed the crew, and scolded a young assistant over a minor slip-up. Roberts stood off to the side, arms crossed, eyes hard. He didn't need to say a word. To a man who valued respect over fame, that kind of arrogance was poison. That night, Pernell Roberts made up his mind. Some stars shine bright, he thought, but not all of them have light. When the two men met backstage, the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Roberts didn't bother with pleasantries. He unleashed years of frustration in one heated burst. He called Connors a fraud, a man who chased applause instead of truth. Connors didn't flinch. He fired right back, sneering that Roberts was just a bitter quitter who couldn't handle success. The shouting match drew attention from everyone nearby, and when it was over, so was their friendship. From that day on, Roberts never mentioned Connors without a touch of venom. In private, he'd call him all hat, no soul, a man obsessed with image but hollow where it mattered most. To Roberts, Connors represented everything wrong with Hollywood: charm on camera, cruelty off it. Number 4. Lorne Greene. Of all Roberts' clashes, none hit closer than home than his feud with the man who played his father on Bonanza, Ben Cartwright himself. To millions of viewers, their bond seemed heartwarming, almost real. But off-screen, that warmth froze into something brittle. Roberts often confessed that working with Green felt suffocating. He said Green carried an air of quiet control that rubbed him raw, both in character and in person. While Green embraced the show's clean, family-friendly formula, Roberts longed for something deeper, stories with grit, social relevance, and moral complexity. To him, Green's loyalty to the network's safe vision wasn't integrity, it was surrender. He chose comfort over courage, Roberts once told a friend, bitterness creeping into his voice. What began as artistic disagreement soon turned into something far more personal, a silent war between ideals and complacency, truth and tradition. Tension had been simmering for years, but Pernell Roberts could feel it, the quiet hostility behind Lorne Greene's polite smile. To Roberts, Greene didn't just see him as a co-star, he saw him as a threat. The younger, sharper actor, unafraid to challenge scripts, question authority, or disrupt the comfortable rhythm of the Bonanza set. Each season, the air grew colder. Roberts hated how Greene's quiet authority shaped the cast, how everyone, especially the younger actors, fell in line like obedient sons. By 1965, he couldn't stomach it anymore. So he did the unthinkable. He walked away from Bonanza, from fame, and from one of the biggest paychecks in television. When asked why he left, Roberts' reply was pure Pernell, blunt, fearless, and unforgettable. I just couldn't spend the rest of my life taking my hat off and saying, "Yes, Pa." To America, Lorne Greene was the perfect TV father, wise, steady, endlessly kind. But to Pernell Roberts, he symbolized everything wrong with Hollywood: the comfort, the caution, the unwillingness to take risks. Where the public saw warmth, Roberts saw complacency, a man content to keep everything exactly as it was. And that defiance didn't stop with Greene. Number 5. James Drury. The stoic star of The Virginian had his own clash with Roberts, not over fame or acting styles, but over values. Roberts never shied away from speaking his mind, taking bold stands against racism, the Vietnam War, and Hollywood's silence on social justice. Drury, a proud conservative, believed politics had no place in entertainment. Their opposing views exploded during a 1970s televised panel about the future of television, turning what was supposed to be a polite discussion into a fiery ideological showdown that audiences never forgot. He never played it safe, on screen or off. When others smiled for the cameras, Pernell Roberts spoke his mind, even when it cost him. At a televised industry panel, he took aim at what he called Hollywood's biggest flaw, its fear of truth. Westerns, he argued, had become comfort food for the masses, easy to swallow but empty inside. James Drury, star of The Virginian, wasn't about to let that slide. The public doesn't want sermons, he fired back. They want escape. The air turned thick. Voices rose. By the time the event ended, the two men stood stone-faced, refusing to shake hands. Later, Roberts vented to a friend. Drury was never just an actor, he said bitterly. He was a mouthpiece for the status quo. What burned him most wasn't disagreement, it was silence. During the civil rights era, when voices mattered most, Drury had none. To Pernell, silence wasn't neutrality, it was betrayal. Still, he stood his ground, even when it left him isolated. Hollywood saw a man of conviction, bold and unyielding, but behind closed doors was another truth: loneliness, heartbreak, and the quiet ache of a man who demanded from himself the same honesty he demanded from the world. His personal life was no less turbulent. He married 4 times, each relationship marked by passion and pain. His first marriage to Vera, a theater professor in 1951, brought him a son, Jonathan Christopher Roberts. Pernell adored his boy, but fame and a restless heart made family life difficult. For all his ideals, he was still a man torn between purpose and peace. He was a man who could command a room, yet couldn't hold on to love. By 1959, Pernell Roberts' first marriage had crumbled, leaving behind not just a broken home, but a quiet ache that would follow him for decades. Though he stayed in his son's life, something invisible always stood between them. Distance, pride, and the walls he built to protect himself. 2 more marriages followed, both ending the same way, in silence and goodbye. Friends often said Pernell was addicted to freedom, allergic to confinement. He loved deeply, but never easily. Behind the fiery intellect and fearless honesty was a man terrified of vulnerability. And then came the blow no parent ever recovers from. In 1989, his only son, Jonathan, was killed in a motorcycle accident at just 38. Those who knew Pernell said it broke him in ways he never revealed. The man who had once stood so tall seemed forever haunted by that loss. Years later, he found a measure of calm beside his 4th wife, Eleanor Crissell. Married in 1997, she gave him something rare: quiet companionship and acceptance. But even in peace, the ghosts of his past lingered. The broken marriages, the lost son, the solitude he had chosen. Pernell Roberts lived exactly as he wanted, bold, uncompromising, and true to his convictions. Yet that freedom came with a price. Beneath the charisma and confidence lay a man shaped by sorrow, longing for connection, but never quite finding it. In the end, he turned away from the glare of Hollywood, choosing serenity over stardom, and perhaps, at last, a bit of peace. He was the man who walked away from Bonanza when the world thought he was crazy to do so. But that's exactly who Pernell Roberts was, a man who refused to be owned by fame. After leaving one of the biggest shows on television, he didn't fade into obscurity. He redefined himself. In the 1980s, Roberts roared back to prominence with Trapper John M.D., earning the admiration of a whole new generation who saw in him not just a TV doctor, but a performer with depth, conviction, and soul. Even as the limelight dimmed, Roberts stayed true to his code, fiercely private, reflective, and unwilling to play the Hollywood game. He turned down fan conventions, rarely granted interviews, and instead poured his energy into music, social justice, and the people he loved most. But behind that calm and unshakable exterior, he was fighting a quiet battle: pancreatic cancer. On January 24, 2010, he passed away at his Malibu home at 81, facing his final challenge with the same quiet dignity that defined his life. His death marked more than the loss of a beloved actor. It closed the final chapter on Bonanza's original cast. Yet even in absence, Roberts remained larger than life. He had been a rebel before rebellion was fashionable, a man who demanded integrity in art and equality in an industry built on illusion. He didn't just want lines to read, he wanted meaning behind them. Fans remember him not only as the stoic Adam Cartwright, but as a man who stood for something real. His courage wasn't loud, it was steady, stubborn, and principled. Pernell Roberts' greatest legacy wasn't just in the roles he played, but in the message his life whispered to anyone who dared to listen. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away. At his death, Pernell Roberts didn't just leave behind memories, he left behind a $10 million fortune. To the world, it looked like the perfect Hollywood ending. Fame, success, and wealth hard-earned over decades in show business. But to Pernell, it was never about any of that. Money meant little, fame even less. even when he was raking in nearly $10,000 per episode on Bonanza, making him one of the highest-paid actors of the 1960s. He felt an ache he couldn't quiet, a longing for something real, something honest. While the world saw charm, polish, and power on screen, behind the curtain, Pernell saw an industry hollowed out by compromise. He despised how art had become a commodity, how truth was trimmed to fit commercial breaks. He didn't want to be adored. He wanted to be authentic. For years, he played along, delivering lines, wearing costumes, taking bows. But beneath it all, his spirit rebelled. His conscience whispered louder than the applause, reminding him that principle, not popularity, was his true calling. At the very height of his fame, when millions adored Adam Cartwright, Pernell Roberts was walking a very different path. While other stars basked in Hollywood's glow, he was marching through Selma, Alabama, shoulder to shoulder with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., not as a celebrity seeking attention, but as a man driven by conscience. That wasn't acting. That was conviction. Back on the Bonanza set, his courage didn't fade. He questioned everything: why there were no black crew members, why white actors were cast as Native Americans, why television refused to face reality. Most brushed him off, but Roberts never silenced his voice. Friends said he could have had it all: wealth, comfort, adoration. Instead, he walked away, not in arrogance, but in pursuit of something Hollywood rarely offers: truth. For Pernell Roberts, integrity wasn't a choice. It was the only way he knew how to live.